It was supposed to be another harmless weekend of urban exploring, until we found the mine. And now, I can't stop hearing the sound of something being dragged in the dark. This happened not even a month ago. I'm a senior in high school, born and raised in Nevada. And if you've ever been here, you know, there's not much to do besides find trouble or find something forgotten. My friends and I, we leaned into the second one. Abandoned buildings, forgotten tunnels, decaying strip malls, we'd hunt down anything left to rot and see what secrets it still held. It wasn't about tagging walls or smashing stuff. We didn't break in to destroy. We just wanted to feel that strange stillness you get in a place the world gave up on. The one guy in our crew who always found the best spots, by which I mean the sketchiest, was Nolan. He had that quiet, mysterious vibe, like he was always 3 steps ahead of some secret you didn't know about. Nolan never explained how he found these places. He'd just show up with a pin drop, or a grainy screenshot from some creepy corner of the internet. This time, he sent us a post from a burner Instagram account, low followers, blurry photos, and comments that made your skin crawl. The caption was short. "Dozens of abandoned mine shafts in the Mojave Desert if you know where to look." Apparently, Nolan had messaged the account, and whoever ran it had given him coordinates. That was all it took. He latched on like it was a personal quest. And by Saturday, it was me, Nolan, and our other friend Elliot loading into my Wrangler, chasing a pin in the middle of nowhere. There was no real address, just a vague area and a single GPS mark, miles deep into the Mojave. By the time we turned off the last paved road, we were already half an hour from anything resembling civilization. The dirt trail we followed barely counted as a road anymore. Just sand, rock, and the kind of emptiness that starts to weigh on your chest. I kept checking my phone like an idiot, even though there was no signal. Elliot was getting visibly pissed in the back seat, muttering that this whole trip was a waste of time. He was convinced Nolan had gotten duped by some troll trying to get clicks. Nolan, of course, wasn't backing down. He never did. So I kept driving. Just when we were about to give up, Elliot spotted something off to the right. At first, just more jagged rock and wind-blasted dirt. But as we pulled closer, it took shape. A crumbling wooden frame, half buried in the side of a slope. It looked like a decayed mouth forced open by time. Part of it had caved in, but behind the leaning beams was a shadow, a black opening leading underground. It was unmistakably a mine shaft. Nolan didn't gloat. He just pulled out his phone, dropped a pin, and muttered, "Told you." Elliot scoffed, said it was dumb luck, but even I had to admit, this was unreal. We were out in the middle of absolute nowhere, and we'd found it. I parked a few yards from the entrance, the Wrangler's tires crunching over loose gravel as we geared up. Nolan even brought dust masks, which, at the time, felt like overkill. Standing at the edge of the shaft, it looked even sketchier up close. Nolan tossed a rock in, and we listened. Clang, clang, clang. Then silence. Deep silence. Nolan turned to us with a flat look. "If you slip, you're dead." We started the descent. It wasn't a vertical drop, thank God. The slope angled down sharply but was walkable, just rough. Loose dirt and scattered debris made it slow going. Old support beams jutted from the walls at uneven intervals, some half-rotted, others strangely sturdy. As we moved deeper, the temperature dropped. The air grew still. The only sound was the scrape of our boots on stone. We lost sight of daylight pretty quick. Eventually, the shaft leveled out and opened into a wide tunnel. From there, it branched into multiple paths. The place looked exactly like you'd picture, beams holding up the walls, rusted tracks vanishing under dirt, broken tools and scraps littering the floor. Everything covered in a thick, undisturbed layer of dust. And the smell, stale, dry rot mixed with something metallic. I didn't even realize how grateful I was for the mask until that hit me. We picked a tunnel and walked. None of us talked much. We weren't looking for treasure or relics, we just wanted to feel the space. To be in it. To say we'd gone where we weren't supposed to go. Most of it was empty. Like it had been picked clean years ago. But then we heard something. A low, faint noise. echoing from somewhere farther down the tunnel. Something being dragged. At first I thought it was just in my head. But when I looked over, Nolan had stopped walking. His head tilted, listening. He heard it too. We were deep underground, flashlights off, and something was moving toward us, dragging itself through the dark. That's when I realized this wasn't exploring anymore. This was survival. Elliot signaled for us to cut our lights. We did. Just like that, we were swallowed by pitch-black silence. Then it came again, a scraping noise. Low and deliberate. Something heavy being dragged across stone. Maybe wood. Maybe metal. Hard to tell with the way it echoed, but one thing was clear, it was getting closer. We stood frozen in the dark, barely breathing. Maybe 30 seconds passed. Maybe longer. Time didn't feel real anymore. The sound grew louder. Still not right next to us, but not far enough away to feel safe either. And then, in the stupidest moment of the night, Elliot fumbled and flicked his flashlight on. Just for a split second. Then darkness again. But it was enough. The dragging stopped. Silence slammed into us. A few heartbeats later, we heard it, a loud metallic clang, like whatever it was had been dropped. And then, a scream. Not human. Not animal. It was a guttural, bone-rattling shriek that came from somewhere deep in the tunnel, and it tore right through me. We didn't wait. We ran, hard, not even caring about noise anymore. Panic took over. I could hear footfalls behind me, fast and thudding, and for a second I was sure whatever it was had started chasing us. I was last in line, struggling to keep up, and that's when I tripped. One of my shoes flew off as I stumbled over something buried in the dirt. I barely stayed on my feet. No time to go back. I ran barefoot, every sharp rock slicing into me. Ahead of me, Nolan and Elliot were already scrambling up the incline toward daylight. I hurled myself up the slope, half crawling, half clawing. Climbing those jagged wooden steps with one bare foot was pure hell. Every other second, another splinter jabbed into me. If not for the adrenaline flooding my veins, I don't think I'd have made it out alive. When I finally burst out into open air, I collapsed. My foot was a wreck, bloody, torn, and unusable. Nolan and Elliot had to half-carry me to the car. I couldn't drive, so Elliot jumped into the front seat and gunned it. We didn't talk. We didn't look back. We just tore across the desert toward the nearest hospital. I was barely conscious from the pain. I needed a tetanus shot, had splinters pulled from everywhere, and couldn't walk right for days. A few days later, once I was back on my feet, Elliot admitted something. He'd lost his wallet. He figured it slipped out near the mine entrance while helping me. He hadn't said anything earlier, but now he thought it might be worth checking. He made it very clear, we were just going to the entrance. No one was stepping back inside. We loaded into the Jeep and drove back using the same pin Nolan had saved. No sign of the wallet. But we did find something else. My shoe. It was sitting in the dirt just a few feet from the mouth of the mine. I limped over, picked it up, and froze. It had been torn apart. Shredded like something had bitten straight through it. There were teeth marks. Whole chunks of it were missing. We didn't hang around after that. We got back in the car and left without another word. We've never come up with a solid explanation. Some might say it was just a drifter hiding down there. But if that's true, how were they surviving? There was no food. No water. No sign of life. And whoever ran that creepy Instagram account? Never answered Nolan again. Total silence. I haven't gone urban exploring since. Especially not out in the desert. We thought a camping trip in the desert would be a quiet escape. No distractions. Just stars and silence. But out there in that open emptiness, something was watching us. I've always been the outdoorsy type. Give me a tent, a fire pit, and an ice chest, and I'm good. I don't need fancy hotels or room service. My kind of vacation is a weekend in the wild, fishing, hiking, whatever. My girlfriend Lila? Same deal. That's probably why we hit it off so fast. We met about 6 months ago, and from the start, our favorite thing to do was disappear into nature for a while. A couple weeks back, we decided to try something different. We both camped in forests, hiked up mountains, swam in lakes. But neither of us had really done the desert. That kind of dry, open space isolation, it felt like something we needed to experience at least once. Plus, we were both obsessed with stargazing. From the very beginning of our relationship, we'd take late-night drives just to park under a sky full of stars, lying on the hood of the truck, talking about nothing. When we found a site that promised clear skies and no light pollution, we didn't think twice. We were in. I found a patch of land online, legal to camp on, remote, no amenities. Just empty space, a few old fire rings, and a ceiling of stars. Sounded perfect. We packed up early that Friday, filled the truck with supplies, and made the 3-hour drive into the middle of nowhere. Out there in the desert, far from roads, far from help, something stood just outside our tent. Watching. Holding fire. The last leg of the drive felt like it would never end. Just endless dirt road with no signs, no fences, no people. Exactly what we were hoping for. By the time we found the campsite, the sun was already sinking low. Not a soul in sight. No parked cars. No distant voices. Just wide, silent land stretching out in every direction. The first couple nights were perfect. Hot during the day, cool and crisp at night. We'd sit by the fire, passing a joint back and forth, sipping on cheap drinks, and talking about nothing. It felt good to disconnect, to not care what time it was or who might be trying to reach us. And yeah, we fooled around in the tent a little. What's a camping trip without some fun? But even on those quiet nights, we started hearing something. Far off. Too far to pinpoint, but loud enough to make you pause. A long, low moan. Almost a howl. It didn't sound human, but it didn't exactly sound like an animal either. The first time we heard it, Lila looked at me wide-eyed like, "Did you hear that too?" I nodded. We laughed it off. I said it was probably a coyote, or maybe a mountain lion. Something normal. Wild deserts have wild sounds. She agreed. The second night, it happened again. Same time, same distant wail drifting across the dunes. Still unsettling, but we chalked it up to nature. Nothing worth losing sleep over. Then came the third night. I woke up to a noise outside the tent. Footsteps. Slow, steady crunches on dry dirt. My eyes snapped open. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. I knew right away, it wasn't an animal. Animals don't walk like that. I wanted to grab the flashlight. I wanted to wake Lila. I wanted to say something. But I couldn't. My body felt paralyzed. Every muscle tense like they'd been locked in place. The footsteps stopped a few feet from the tent. Silence. I stared straight up at the roof of the tent, heart slamming against my ribs, listening, begging for the sound of them walking away. Instead, I heard a flick. That sharp, unmistakable click of a lighter. A soft orange glow lit up the tent wall. Waist height. Just a few feet away. Someone was holding it steady, like they wanted us to see it. Then they started moving the flame. Slowly. Side to side. I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. I just watched that glow like it was death itself creeping closer. And then the light grew. What started as a flicker became a full-on glow. Whoever was out there had lit something. A torch, maybe? Then suddenly, they dropped it. Thud. It hit the ground outside, and the side of the tent exploded in light. Flames. The heat hit fast. Way faster than I expected. Fire doesn't play fair in a tent. Within seconds, the fabric was catching. That's what finally snapped me out of it. I shook Lila awake. She shot up instantly, eyes wide, taking in the situation without me even needing to explain. We scrambled, grabbing what we could and tossing it into the dirt outside. There wasn't time to think, just move. Half the tent was already toast. Lila grabbed a water jug and dumped it on the flames while I stripped out anything still burning. Somehow, We managed to kill the fire before it swallowed everything. What was left of the tent was shredded. Melted. Useless. I snatched the flashlight and swept it across the darkness, trying to find whoever had done it. Nothing. No figure. No footprints. No flicker of movement in the distance. Lila had already started packing up what little was salvageable, and I jumped in to help. We didn't say much. We just moved fast. We didn't have a clear path to the truck. No trail markers. No lights. Just blackness and gut instinct. After a few minutes of walking in what we hoped was the right direction, I heard it. That scream again. Only now, it didn't stop. It went on, long, drawn out, like an animal in agony. Then another scream. And another. They came from behind us. Dozens of yards away. Maybe more. But they were different this time, closer. Clearer. And there wasn't just one. There were multiple. I didn't say a word. I just grabbed Lila's arm and started moving faster. By some kind of miracle, we found the truck. We tossed our gear into the back without a second thought, slammed the doors shut, and I threw it into drive. I couldn't floor it, those roads were too rough. One wrong bump and we'd roll. But I drove as fast as I dared, eyes locked on the narrow path lit by my high beams. No one spoke. It wasn't until we saw the first signs of Rio Road, other cars, and civilization creeping back in that I let myself breathe. Lila was trying to hold it together. But I could see the tears welling up. I was no better. My hands were shaking on the wheel. And in that moment, I realized something awful. We still had no idea what was out there. And it knew exactly where we would doubt if I hadn't been such a light sleeper. Lila and I might have died in the desert that night. And somehow, that nightmare ties into something darker, something I think my mom's been hiding my entire life. After the fire, after the screaming, after we barely escaped with our lives, we did what any sane person would do. We called the cops. Filed a report. Tried to explain what had happened out there in the middle of nowhere. But even as I was talking to the dispatcher, I couldn't shake one single, gut-twisting thought. If I'd slept any deeper, we'd be dead. That night never fully left me. And it matters, because of what I'm about to tell you. It's all connected, at least I think it is. See, I've always had this weird feeling about my mom's past. Suspicious isn't the right word, but I've never found a better one. She was born in northern Mexico, in one of those dusty border towns near Texas. Spent her childhood there. Then, one day, she packed up her life and crossed into the States alone to go to college. That's the story. At least, the version we got. She met my dad here. Found work. Built a new life. She never went back. But her life before America? It's like it never existed. A sealed box. She shuts it down every time it comes up, dodges questions with a joke, or just changes the subject entirely. Growing up, my dad always said it was probably some childhood trauma, something she preferred not to talk about. And for the longest time, I accepted that. Why wouldn't I? But the older I got, the more it stood out. She was too good at avoiding questions. Skilled, almost. And the older I became, the more I noticed it, how every family gathering, every holiday, she'd masterfully shift attention away if anyone asked about. Before. All I've ever really known is that she grew up in a rough border town. The kind of place people leave if they're lucky enough to get the chance. One of the few things she ever joked about was her family, and even that felt off. She used to say her dad's side were the politicians, her mom's side were the crooks, but she could never tell which was worse. Back then I laughed. Just a bitter joke, right? Now I'm not so sure. Her dad worked for the government in some vague capacity, never got more detail than that. And her mother? Never mentioned. Not once. Not even a name. Except for one name. One I'll never forget. I'll call him R. I was 10 or 11 when I first heard it. I'd gotten up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, and as I walked past the living room, I heard my mom talking. Quiet. Whispering, really? It was dark, but I could tell she was on the phone. I didn't speak Spanish, but I caught one thing clearly: she kept saying, "R," over and over. Not like she was speaking to someone, more like she was talking about them. Her voice low, tense, careful. I was still a little scared of the dark back then, so I flipped on the hallway light without thinking. She didn't jump. Didn't even flinch. It was like she expected me. She just hung up the phone and stared at me, no warmth, no expression. Just cold eyes in the dim light. She told me to go back to bed, and I did, heart pounding. I never heard that name again. That, plus a vague family joke and some shadowy government job, that's all I know about my mother's life before the States. And now we come to what happened nearly a year ago. A moment I can't stop replaying. I was living in Arizona, a year out of college, just trying to keep my life moving. I'd planned a long road trip to visit an old college buddy, hours of desert driving, dead stretches of highway, nothing but the hum of the wheels and the sunburned road. I was bored out of my mind. Music wasn't cutting it. I don't do podcasts, so I started cycling through my contacts, calling friends, girls, anyone I could think of. Eventually, I called my mom. Soccer is our thing. Champions League, Premier League, all of it. We can talk about matchups and formations for hours. That day was no different. It was a good call. Easy, normal. Then, in the middle of it, I saw them. 2 pickup trucks parked across the road, side by side, completely blocking the highway. No smoke. No wreck. No hazard lights. It didn't look like an accident. Just intentional. I slowed down. My mom was still talking, unaware. I hadn't told her anything was wrong. As I rolled to a stop, my mind raced. Is this a breakdown? Someone stranded? Am I about to help someone? Then the doors flew open. 3 men jumped out. All armed. Guns out. No hesitation. Another vehicle sped up behind me and boxed me in. I froze. Unarmed. Alone. No options. One of the men walked up and tapped the barrel of his gun on my window. Motioned for me to get out. The others fanned out behind him. None of them looked nervous. None of them looked rushed. I raised my hands, heart slamming in my chest, and stepped out of the car. Behind me, the trailing car stopped and idled. The guy with the gun barked something at me in Spanish. Sharp. Commanding. I had no idea what he said. And that, in that exact moment, was the most crushing part. I'm Mexican-American, and I don't speak Spanish. Never learned. Never bothered. And now? I was staring down a gun, unable to say a single word that might save me. All I could do was stand there and pray I hadn't just driven straight into something I couldn't get out of. I was standing in the desert with guns in my face, and no clue what they were saying. But then one of them picked up my phone, my still-connected call, and everything changed. I didn't need to understand Spanish to figure out what they wanted. Within seconds I was stripped of my wallet, keys, phone, everything. I thought I was done for. Stranded in the middle of nowhere with no help, no escape, and no chance of walking away clean. Then one of the guys got into my truck. That's when it all shifted. My heart sank as I realized I never ended the call with my mom. The Bluetooth connection was still live. My truck was still running. She was still on the line. I watched through the driver's side window as the man reached toward the screen, like he was going to hang up, but stopped short. Pulled his hand back. Just listened. And then it hit me. He was listening to my mom. His lips started moving. A full conversation. I couldn't hear it, windows shut, door closed, but I knew what was happening. They were speaking Spanish. And I swear to God, I saw him say that name, R, over and over. Like my mom had said it, and he was confirming he heard her right. The other 2 men must have caught on, because they stopped standing guard and walked over to the truck. The guy inside rolled the window down, said something to them, and then all 3 of them turned to look at me. Their faces had changed. No more tension. Just curiosity. Like they were reevaluating who they were dealing with. A few seconds later, they handed everything back to me. My phone. My keys. Even my ID. The only thing they kept was the cash from my wallet. As one of them passed it back, he looked at me with a grin and said, "Tax." Thick accent and all. I could have hugged him. I didn't care about the money. I was just grateful to be alive. As I drove off, all 3 trucks peeled away in the opposite direction, kicking up dust as they disappeared into the desert. I looked for license plates, but there weren't any. Still shaken, I called my mom the moment I had signal. I demanded answers. She gave me some weak story about threatening to call the police, saying she knew my exact location and scared them off. I told her that was crap, none of it added up. I asked her what they really talked about. What she really said. She stuck to her story. Claimed most of it was just her pleading for my safety in Spanish. But I didn't believe her. And deep down, I don't think I ever will. I told her to call the cops, and she said she would. We ended the call. I drove the rest of the way in total silence, staring out into the desert with this cold pit in my gut. I buried that memory for a while. Pretended it was just a close call, something to laugh about someday. But the more time passes, the less I can shake the feeling. My mom knows people. Or knew them. Maybe still does. And maybe whoever he is, still has pull in that world. I've thought about confronting her. Asking, face to face, what she's hiding. But part of me's scared, not of the argument, but of the answer. Scared of the world I might step into if she tells me the truth. Old friends, cheap whiskey, and a house that creaked with secrets. I thought I was just making a pit stop. I didn't know I was stepping into something I wouldn't forget. I just wrapped up a few days visiting friends in Austin. I live in Louisiana, so the drive home was gonna take most of the day. On my last morning in town, I posted a quick story to Instagram, just a pic of my breakfast with a caption like, "Hitting the road today." A few minutes later, I got a message from Drew. I hadn't seen him in years. We were close back in high school, but life took us in different directions after graduation. We followed each other online but hadn't talked in forever. He asked when I was heading out, and I told him today. Turns out, he lived about an hour outside of Austin, right on my route home. He said I should stop by and catch up for a bit. And honestly, I figured, why not? So I punched in the address and hit the road. The place was tucked away, off a back road that looked like it hadn't seen a streetlight in decades. When I pulled up, his house looked exactly how I imagined it might, old, wooden, a little weathered, but not run down. More frozen in time. The porch creaked under my boots as I walked up, and when Drew opened the door, the smell hit me, aged wood and something rustic, like an old hunting cabin that had seen 1,000 winters. He was the same as ever, big grin, warm hug, instantly pulling me inside like no time had passed. Some friendships just pick up like they never stopped. Inside, the place looked straight out of the 70s. Thick furniture, floral couches, heavy wooden tables. Every step on the floor groaned under my weight. It felt authentic. A little eerie, but charming in its own way. Like I'd walked into a family photo that hadn't changed in decades. We settled into the living room, poured a couple glasses of whiskey, and started catching up. It was around 5 p.m. One drink turned into 2, then 3. The house felt warmer, closer. Not just from the alcohol, there was something in the air. A heaviness. But I ignored it. We were having a good time. Hours slipped past without us noticing. Then, as the sun dipped low and shadows stretched long across the wooden floor, Drew leaned back, swirling his glass. "Hey man," he said, voice casual but a little too measured. "You've got a long drive ahead of you. Sometimes, it's not the dream that's scary. It's waking up and realizing the nightmare was standing there, silently watching you sleep. Why don't you crash here tonight?" Drew offered, his voice casual, warm. I hesitated. I still had a long drive ahead, but I wasn't exactly in shape to be behind the wheel. "Yeah," I finally said, rubbing my eyes. "That's probably smart." I figured I'd take the couch, but Drew shook his head. Nah, I got a spare room. It's nothing special, but it beats crashing out here. Sounded good enough to me. We ordered Chinese, sat around for a bit longer, still a little drunk and laughing about old memories. Eventually, he led me down a short hallway to a small room. I was hammered. We both were. So I didn't take much in. Just a vague sense of stillness in the air, like the room hadn't been disturbed in years. The bed felt ancient, but soft. I dropped onto it like dead weight, shoes and all, and passed out. I don't know how long I was out before something woke me. Mouth dry. Head pounding. My body heavy and fogged from the whiskey. The room was dark, just a sliver of moonlight sneaking through the blinds. And that's when I saw it. In the far corner, right by the closet door, something was hanging. At first, I thought it was just a long black coat draped over a rack. But the more my eyes adjusted, the more wrong it looked. It had broad, unnatural shoulders. It didn't hang like fabric. It didn't sway or shift. It just loomed there. Still. Solid. Too solid. My heart started to race. I didn't remember seeing anything there when I collapsed into bed. Then again, I was drunk. Maybe I just didn't notice. I rolled over, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Just a coat. A trick of the shadows. But I couldn't stop myself. I peeked again. Still there. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing myself to ignore it. Told myself I was being paranoid. Just sleep, I whispered in my head. Just sleep. And I must have drifted off. Until the sound woke me. A slow, deliberate creak. Old wood shifting under weight. Footsteps. My eyes flew open. The room was dim now, dawn just beginning to push against the blinds. I turned my head toward the corner. And it was gone. The shape. The figure. Whatever it wasn't there anymore. I sat up so fast my head spun. My chest felt like it might crack open from how hard my heart was pounding. The closet door stood closed. No coat. No shape. Nothing. Still dizzy and sick with fear, I tore the covers off and stumbled to Drew's room. He was out cold, snoring. Completely unaware. I shook him. Hard. He groaned, half awake, confused. The coat, I gasped. In the spare room. He squinted at me, rubbing his eyes. What coat? The black trench coat, I said. It was hanging on the closet door. It looked like a person. Drew sat up, blinking harder now. Dude, I don't even own a trench coat. And there's no coat rack in that room. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. Waiting for him to say he was screwing with me. But he didn't. His expression stayed flat. Serious. Come look, I said. He sighed, but got up and followed me. We walked down the hallway, my skin prickling with unease. I pointed. Right there. That's where it was. Drew scratched his head and looked around. Are you sure you weren't just dreaming? I know what I saw, I said. My voice was shaking now. I woke up. I was awake. It was there, and then it wasn't. We stood in that room for a long moment. The silence felt heavy, thick enough to choke on. Finally, Drew exhaled. All right. Let's check the house. We did. Every room. Every closet. Every dark corner. Nothing. No coats. No broken windows. No signs of a break-in. Eventually, Drew tried to reason it out. Said maybe it was a dream bleed, some kind of drunken half-sleep hallucination. I wanted to believe that. God, I needed to believe that. But the feeling in my gut wouldn't let it go. As soon as the sun was fully up, I packed my things, said a quick goodbye, and left. I almost felt guilty leaving him alone in that house. But I wasn't sticking around. The whole drive back to Louisiana, my mind circled one thought over and over. I woke up, and it was watching me. And by morning it was gone. Maybe Drew played a cruel joke. Maybe. But he's never admitted to anything. Even years later. And that leaves one possibility that still haunts me. Someone was in that room. And they left before the sun could catch them. When we pulled into that lonely gravel parking lot surrounded by forest, I had no idea I'd be listening to screams, shovels, and footsteps before the night was over. We made it to the city where the theme park was, but the plan was to hit it the next morning, so we just needed a place to crash for the night. Since we had tents packed in the car, my dad started checking for nearby campsites. He found one that seemed perfect, close, decent looking, so he gave them a call. Bad luck. That weekend happened to line up with a huge soccer tournament, and the place was completely full. No reservation, no space. He called around for others, but everything nearby was either booked or way too expensive. That left us with one option: wild camping. He set the GPS to a public forest parking lot to avoid getting ticketed. Eventually, we ended up in a nature reserve, a little gravel lot tucked into the woods. When we got there, a few people were still around. My dad asked a woman who looked like she'd just come off a hike if it was okay to camp there. She said it was a good place to stay, quiet, no parking enforcement. That was enough for us. We debated setting up the tents on a nearby beach, just a 10-minute walk through the trees, but something about it made me hesitate. I couldn't explain why, but I felt safer in the gravel lot. So we stayed. As we got out to unload our gear, I noticed a single car parked at the far edge of the lot. It was in rough shape, old, dented, empty. It struck me as odd. It was already late evening. The beach was empty, the trails quiet. There shouldn't have been anyone else around. Still, I didn't think much of it. We set up our tents. My parents took one, and Anna, my friend, and I shared the other. We pitched them close together for warmth and peace of mind. After the usual tent-building chaos, we settled in. Anna and I made our tent cozy, pulled out some snacks, watched random YouTube videos. It was about 11 p.m., and we were just trying to relax before bed. Around midnight, we decided to sleep. My parents were already out cold in their tent, and Anna and I were lying side by side, scrolling through TikTok when we heard it, a sharp metallic clank. We both jumped. It sounded like something heavy, like a shovel, being tossed onto gravel. From the same direction as the abandoned car. Neither of us dared look out the window. We just froze. Listening. Then came another sound. The clunk of a trunk closing. Silence. Our hearts thundered in the stillness. Then, tires on gravel. The car peeled away fast, like whoever was behind the wheel was desperate to get out. I grabbed my phone and texted a friend who lived in a nearby city, just to let someone know where we were. His reply came quick, and it chilled me. He warned me that the beach near that forest had a sketchy reputation. Organized criminals. Illicit stuff. The kind of place where the police rarely go. I stared at his message, suddenly very aware of how far we were from anything. We sat in silence, trying to calm down. Maybe 10 minutes passed. And that's when we heard the scream. It came from deep in the woods, a loud, blood-curdling howl from a man. Not playful. Not drunk. Agonized. Anna and I were paralyzed. I texted my mom, telling her what we heard. When she didn't respond, I called her. She finally picked up, groggy. Said neither she nor my dad had heard anything. Told us not to worry. But that scream, it didn't come from a movie or a nightmare. It was real. Anna and I crawled deeper into the blankets, wide-eyed, shivering with fear. Then, everything went quiet. Too quiet. And that's when I heard it, footsteps. Crunching, slow, cautious. Someone was walking around our tents. I could feel the blood drain from my face. Anna sat up beside me. We didn't move. I quickly dimmed my phone screen and placed it face down. The footsteps moved around our tent first, circling it, then shifting toward my parents' tent. Then around the car. They were inspecting us. Measuring. Thinking. There's no reason, none, for someone to be walking through a forest campsite at midnight. Not alone. Not like that. Then we saw the headlights. The same car from earlier came back. Its beams hit the fabric of our tent, lighting it up like a paper lantern. Anna and I dropped flat, trying not to cast shadows. I risked a glance through the tiny window in the fabric. The car door opened, then slammed, and it sped off again. I exhaled barely. I thought that was it. I thought we were done. But then I saw it. Another vehicle tearing down the road toward us. Fast. This one wasn't just a car. It was a police cruiser. Lights off. Moving fast. Chasing the direction the other car had taken. When I think about that night, I still don't know what was scarier, the blood-curdling scream, the footsteps circling our tent, or the silence that came after. But what chills me most is what I learned after we left. Nothing else happened after that. Anna and I, still rattled and wide awake, decided we'd feel safer inside the car. We climbed in, locked the doors, and sat in silence, eyes scanning the tree line like it might come alive. Anna eventually dozed off in the passenger seat. I didn't. I stayed awake until around 5 in the morning, staring out the windshield like I was expecting something to come crawling out of the woods. When the first light broke through the trees, we went back to the tent, too exhausted to fight it anymore, and passed out. We woke up around 9 a.m., totally drained. I told my mom everything. That's when she admitted something that made my skin crawl. She had heard the footsteps. She'd just been too scared to say anything in the moment. She said that when the person got close to their tent, she heard them breathing. Slow. Heavy. The kind of deep, rattling inhale you hear in horror movies, right before something awful happens. She was terrified too. My dad, on the other hand, slept through the whole damn thing. We didn't waste any time. We tore down the tents, packed everything up, and left. None of us said much during the drive. None of us wanted to. Despite the night, we still went to the theme park that day. We tried to enjoy ourselves, and for the most part, we did. But that evening, I made the mistake of looking up that forest. What I found made my stomach turn. A man had been murdered there just a short time before our trip. Stabbed to death in what police believed was a gang-related killing. Worse, 2 men had disappeared from that exact beach. Vanished. Never found. I couldn't stop thinking about it. The shovel. The scream. The car. The footsteps. What if the person circling our tents was looking for witnesses? What if we'd seen something without even knowing it? Even now, I don't have answers. I still wonder about that scream echoing from the trees, what it meant, who made it, and why it sounded like someone dying. And I still think about that car. What were they doing in the forest with a shovel in the middle of the night? And why did the police come racing in afterward, chasing down that same road? Whatever happened in those woods, I'm just glad we made it out.